What's up friends, Liron here. Thank you for joining me in another video. Today I want to share with you a sketch I did yesterday, and I want to show you the entire process and really narrate my thought process, how I approach it, and what I'm doing as best as I can. The sketch was done outside and the sun was crazy and it was so hot. At some point it became just really hard to just sit there, and I was wearing all black. Lucky me. And so yeah, but I really hope you will learn something new from just seeing the sketch process. And yeah, that's it. Let's get to it. Okay, so now I'm starting to plan out where I want to start and kind of trying to figure out the proportions of this sketch, which is the hardest thing in the beginning. You can see the reference photo from the back and on the left, sorry. I decided to just start with the roof. Starting from top to bottom is something that usually works well for me. The one thing that's really hard for me to do as well is to sort of judge or assess the angle of the initial few lines I'm creating, just because I have nothing to compare to. And so sometimes if I start on the right foot, so to say, the rest of the sketch is really good. I think in this one I kind of started at a bad angle a bit. And so this was a continuous error, but not that significant. So now just finishing that sort of trapezoid front shape of the roof and coming down with the line of the... This is basically the entire dark, super dark area on the right, and generally speaking the roof itself is dark. One thing that really fascinates me here in Paris is just the architecture is fantastic, especially the roofs. I love it. One of my favorite books on urban sketching is called Rooftops of Paris. I forgot the name of the artist, but it's just a beautiful book. Hopefully I can review it one day. It's actually in Israel, so maybe when I go back there. Campanero, I think, very famous urban sketching sort of artist. Now trying to get those chimney in. Now I apologize about the angle. It sort of leans towards the right, but my lines here are as vertical as I could draw them originally, and just adding this chimney. And it's important to indicate that line I just did because there's going to be a strong shadow under it, and just adding those little sort of chimneys up there, really a very strong characteristic of Paris or Parisian rooftops. Parisian or Parisian, I'm not sure. In any case, now closing off that dark roof section. The next stage will be to sort of build the rest of the structure of the entire building, and then to approach actually getting in the details, which will be pretty pretty challenging, as you'll see, with the windows at the angle and all of that. So now you see there's a bit of trying to get this sort of the wall goes inside, meaning the roof protrudes outwards a bit, and then there's this balcony, and I'm trying to just get that to look right. The video itself is running at normal speed. I didn't speed it up, and I think that I will drop the time-lapse for this one. Oops, the wind just threw it in my face, so I'm putting the clamp thing on the left. In any case, I think I will drop the time-lapse with this particular one. I won't do a time-lapse version because I feel like they just are less accepted. If I do publish a painting or a sketch and you want to see a time-lapse, kindly let me know in a comment and I will be sure to make one. But I will sort of avoid making these in the near future just to see how it goes. It feels like it is sort of a double content, and if it doesn't have enough unique value, I just won't do it. Anyway, now simplifying that balcony thing, there's this sort of pose. Now, instead of drawing the actual pose, which will be super hard, I'm just drawing the gaps between them. And overall, in the grand scheme of the entire sketch, it will look good, it will look naturally, as you will see. The line I sketched just now is indicating the shadow actually under the roof. It's not indicating any particular object. And now I'm starting to put in the windows using that line as a guideline. One thing I was struggling with is that I didn't really have a good place to lean my hand on, especially as the sketch veers more towards the right side. And so, yeah, it's a big challenge not to sketch on a table or on a surface, just to put it like this on the lap, which is something, again, that I'll need to somehow sort out. I am using my good tripod with this one. Now trying to figure out just the distances for the windows to understand where to place them, and the top line seemed like the most logical choice of getting started on portraying them. I'm really sort of in a mentality with this one of trying to be loose, and you will notice how it may be a little less tight than my usual style. Really trying to enjoy this one, enjoy the process, because I find that, and it relates to the video I published about my pillars, I just find that sometimes it's hard for me to really disconnect from the whole work thing and actually enjoy the lines I'm putting on the paper and enjoy the paintings. In this sense, I'm jealous of people that don't do this as their work or for a living, but actually have this as a pure hobby only. But yeah, it's a bit of a challenge that I'm currently dealing with. I think I should definitely set aside some time that's for pure creation without worrying about showing it to anyone or documenting it or anything. Anyway, now the second layer of windows is a little easier because it goes in the same structure of the top one. So we have the 4 top ones, small ones, then we have the 4 larger ones, sorry, with those arches on the top. Their shape is a little more complex, but I do know where to place them already because I have the guideline of the previous windows. So just placing them in, not too worried about, you see, the three-dimensionality. I also was quite far away from the building to see all those small details. Now just adding the inner side of the window that is visible due to the angle, as well as some details on the arches. There's a strong cast shadow on the roof, just getting that in for later so that I have a hint, and also for the top row of windows. A very challenging lighting situation here, mainly because the lighting is very sharp. I think it's a blessing too. It's not just like it's a blessing and a curse. You need to really get those shadows in right on the one hand, but on the other hand, it's really a blessing because sharp contrast. This is for me at least, the easier things to sketch. Now getting some of the windows and details on the right side, and most of these are going to be in shadow, as you can see on the reference, and this is what will give them their unique, beautiful look, because there will be some strong highlights to set them apart from the wall. Getting in some of the trees here. I will get in that structure on the left just because I love its shape and the way that this chimney structure is sort of connected. But yeah, I just wanted to get that tree in because it's in the foreground, closer to us, to the viewer, and actually obscuring some of that structure in the background. So I just rode that wave and got in the rest of the sort of bushes and trees there. Sorry, just trees, no bushes. Now there is this huge pole that goes up to the sky. You can't see the part I'm sketching right now, but it is there. It's just a very interesting place, actually. It's like the Nelson Mandela Park, and there is a lot of interesting buildings around it. I will soon start sketching, and it will give things a little more form and a little more, start shading. Yeah, and it'll give things some more form and shape. But for now, we do have some more details to get in. So approaching this window, this structure on the left, one thing on the macro level that you want to make sure is that you don't go too detailed with it, and also not too dark maybe on the value, well, depending on the situation, but at least not too detailed because it's a bit to the left, and if you don't want it to take too much attention from the main interest, which is the building on the right, you may want to avoid going into too many details there. And you can see already in the chimneys I sort of get them in there quickly. But this isn't necessarily the case. You could decide that these two buildings as a whole are the center of attention. You see, it's just a matter of choice. And so in this instance, because I focused on the building on the right, I could go quicker and more loose on the building on the left. But of course, you can get everything to look super accurate and detailed. It's an artistic choice, I think. Everyone is free to choose what they want. I do think it's really, really cool and admirable if you're able to figure out what works best and looks really good in your style and just apply that. So anyway, now starting to do the cross-hatching. This whole topic, by the way, of style is really interesting. Personal style, developing your own style, and I think really each and every one of us has a unique style that sort of emerges with practice. I think it's all a matter of mastery. I don't think you should do too much to expose your own personal style, but I do think that that you should try a lot of different things. That's the one thing that is important no matter what. Try a lot of different things and work really hard towards mastering the skill, and the personal style will come as a byproduct, really. So continuing with this initial sort of layer of cross-hatching, and this is not too fascinating, of course. I'm just putting in lots of parallel lines, which is a good opportunity to say that if you're struggling with getting lines to be in the right angle you want, or sort of reading the angles, cross-hatching is a great exercise just to practice this, because you can draw lines in many different angles and practice with a lot of repetition on it. Now drawing again the inner sides of the windows, and you can see a little less of the top of the inner side because these are lower. It's a slight difference. I think this is the type of things I will dive much deeper into in my upcoming urban spontaneous sketching course. Sorry. Those little details. Now you will notice how the darker values here are really important on the chimneys, on the right side of the chimney structure, under the roof, as I will start indicating right now. You just want to get an overall good feeling with the values. So right now I'm definitely not done with them. If you'll notice on the right, the entire right wall should be really dark, really dark compared to the front. And this is what I'm gonna get soon here. So for now it's incomplete. This is also one of the, I think, biggest mistakes beginners make in not allowing enough of a variety in the values, and yeah, just keeping it a little too flat. And right now you see it's flat. It's not really, there aren't too many details here, and so it's really something to take into consideration. Now I think I'm considering sort of sketching the, just getting in the, I thought I'm gonna shade the pole on the right, but I'm just moving already to the roof on the left now. Trying to get it darker, and you'll see in a few moments I get it much darker than it is right now, because it's not dark enough. It's actually almost black. It's probably the darkest value you can see here. Similarly to the right side of that right building, which I will sketch really soon. We need to get it really dark. So as you can see here, I'm really darkening it, and even that won't be enough. I will need to come back with an initial layer. Oh, the cat cries. Yes, Jack, but what do you want? What do you want? So I really here need to get it as dark as possible, and it's really not enough sometimes to get 2 layers of cross-hatching. You need, sorry about that noise, you kind of need to get a 3rd one, as you'll see me do soon. But as you can see, it's really important to preserve the highlights like I did now. Just like watercolor, even when sketching and cross-hatching, you want to preserve those highlights and make sure they come through through the dark layer, because it's what's going to give it this sense of depth and 3-dimensionality. There's also a strong shadow under things, so not just on the right sides of walls. So under that top part of the roof, we will see a strong shadow. Again, on the right side of the buildings, of the windows, sorry, like I'm doing now. Also under the arches and under the I'm really confused with the arches and the paper, but anyway, under the arches there will be strong shadow. Under those inside the window panes are really dark. I will come back and sort of darken them a little further. This is typically the most boring step of the sketch, really. But I do want to share this entire thought process with you. Generally trying to move from dark to light. Some people may prefer, to first darken the darkest of the darkest, like the almost blacks, and then take it from there. I usually just start by layering everything that's a little darker, and then layering again over it with another layer of cross-hatching, all the things that are even darker than that, and so on and so forth. This shadow under the roof that I'm sketching right now is deceptively dark because it's on a light wall that's almost white or maybe beige. You may think it's not that dark, but it actually is. And the one thing that I find really confusing for me and challenging is to draw shadows on surfaces that are inherently light. So for example, if you have a very white, bright wall and you have a shadow on it, I find it very challenging to understand what the shadow looks like, how dark it is, what colors I should mix to get it. So it really is a matter of a lot of practice in observing and seeing things as accurately as possible. I just watched Steve Mitchell's The Mind of Watercolor video on what realistic sort of artists that do realism do well, and he talked about this as well, not drawing from your head but actually really carefully observing the subject or the object you're trying to draw. I'm gonna put a link to this video, link to Steve Mitchell's video, really good one on realism. Just 5 tips that are really good. And so, I'm just writing it for myself. Yes, now I'm going in with the super darks, while leaving in the sort of shape of the window panes, I guess, the white area around the frames of the window panes, just to give it some pop, you know. And I feel like the top isn't dark enough, so I go ahead and darken it a little more, which requires me to darken the entire front side of the roof, because the top is a little darker than the bottom. You see, it's kind of developing and in the making. One correlation that you can make is actually with watercolor and this type of sketching is just like watercolor. When you go through these phases when the sketch or paint, where the painting, sorry, doesn't look as good, the exact same thing happens here. You go through these phases of layering that may not look as you plan, they may not look as good as you want, and it's really because you still have work to do. So it's really important to not give up on the work. I think that a novice, I don't know, an amateur mistake is to give up on a painting or a sketch or whatever it is too early, instead of trying to make the best out of it. And many times it just can be salvageable, and there's nothing to salvage because you're just doing work in progress. So many times it's all good, but for some reason you sort of just decide for yourself that it's not good, which is ridiculous. Anyway, so it's important to see the sketch or painting to the end, not give up on it. It's something I'm proud of myself for doing now. I usually don't just trash a painting or a sketch. I really try to make the best out of it. In any case, now I'm really going dark on this building on the left. If you look at the reference, it's super dark. It's like black, almost black, just like the right side again of the building on the right. Adding some imaginary details that weren't really there, some windows. I know there are some pipes there, but I just couldn't figure out exactly what they were, so I just didn't sketch them. You can decide what you want to sketch and what you want to leave out. That's the cool thing about it. Some details for the trees. I started by doing some scribbling, and then I understood that it's just going to be a nightmare. So first I do cross-hatching, and then I scribble as a final layer. This is actually a trick I learned from watching a YouTube video on cross-hatching, which was phenomenal. And the guy that taught it, and I won't be able to remember what it was exactly, he used a fountain pen, and he does this approach. He he doesn't do rendering of textures. He doesn't try to get the trees to look like leaves or leafy texture or anything like that. First he cross hatches, sort of giving it the value he wants, and only then he goes on to add the specific texture, to render the specific texture he wants. This is what I'm doing now. Doing another layer of cross-hatching because the trees are significantly dark. As I always say, I probably sound like a broken record by now, but yeah, trees are usually one of the darkest elements foliage in general is usually one of the darkest elements in a scene. So now again, getting that second layer, and this allows me to start doing the cross-hatching, the scribbling. I'm confused today. So now I'm doing the scribbling, which will give it the final ultimate darkness as well as the texture. And this is a tedious process, not too interesting. I think I'm actually subconsciously doing it way too fast now because I know I'm recording this, so I lack some patience, or maybe I'm afraid it won't be interesting to the person viewing. But this is definitely something that should be done a little slower, a little more carefully. But I'm actually happy that you get to see my authentic side when sketching and drawing, and seeing all of my impatience and seeing all of that. I think it's just a part of who I am, you know, and I think it's important to convey that. It sure is something I want to improve, but for now it's a part of who I am. So yeah, it's there. And we're really nearing the end of this. I just want to get one last sort of glaze, shall we call it, or layer on top of that right area. Looking back, I should have kept it only to the top, but I believe I'm going all the way to the bottom of this right area. It looked much darker when I was there, I have to say. Should have probably kept it only to the top part. But anyway, really close to finishing this, just adding some more trees, foliage details, trying to get a better sort of composition, I guess. Doing some scribbling. One of the only things that's actually left to do is get the shading of that huge pole on the right. Which has some interesting things going on there, because the rightmost side is completely dark. Then, because it has these sort of lines running across it, you can see strips of light, and this is something I wish I had a little more support for my hand, because then I could have created a better impression of it. So I'm just really improvising here. It was really uncomfortable, I have to say, but I'm just trying to get that super dark on the right, then these stripes of darkness the more I move to the left. Hopefully the general impression that it created looks good and looks correct. It was super sunny and hot, as I mentioned, and yeah, you know, these things influence you and your patience to work. You know, you kind of really need to find a good spot in the shadow, not too strong of a contrast with the paper. But anyway, yeah, this one is done now. Just a quick look at the reference. Friends, this is it. I hope you enjoyed the video and the topics I talked about. Don't forget to follow me here, Snapchat and Instagram. I want to thank you all for the support, and I will see you again tomorrow.